don't think that you should ever make a decision like that that may be detrimental to your own self-being while you're in that state of mind. I think it's very important to, while you're in that state of mind, slow yourself down, slow your thinking down, slow your body down, sit still, try to just be in the moment and try to let the moment pass. Because when you have that adrenaline flowing through your body, like I said, you can make irrational decisions to where you may regret something that you do for the rest of your life, or that might potentially end your life, like I just said. But I mean, it's important to normalize, the biological process and not take it as a personal weakness. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Everything's Okay, a mental health podcast brought to you by Crazy Ant Media. Today, we'll be talking about anxiety and panic attacks and how panic attacks lead into depression and different things that are going on in life. As always, I'm joined by my father-in-law and co-host, Dustin. How are you doing today?
What's up? Doing good, doing good. Yeah, man, I think this is going to be an interesting topic. Definitely one because I don't really suffer from panic attacks.
Right.
I'm pretty comfortable with things that normally bring on panic attacks. And I don't get anxious very much. It's very rare that I walk into a room or I'm in a situation where I feel anxious about anything. But a lot of people in my life, including you and Emily, for anybody out there listening, you know who Emily is, my daughter, his wife. So it's I'm going to be coming at it from a perspective of what it's like to be somebody on the outside while somebody's going through a panic attack. Because it can cause a bunch of mental strife for the person trying to figure out what to do for the person with the panic attack, right? So it's going to be an interesting conversation. And I think a lot of people, this is way more common than people think. So diving into this and kind of opening it up is going to be a good one.
Yeah, most definitely. And for people like yourself who, or those who may not have come across any panic attacks or anyone who has had a panic attack before, the feeling is kind of like if you have ever felt like your heart is racing out of control, you can't catch your breath, and the world is closing in on you. Well, that's the thing. You're not alone. A lot of other people in the world do feel like that. Today, we're talking about panic attacks, of course, and we definitely feel like they are something that are debilitating, especially as someone who has suffered from panic attacks recently. Definitely, that's why I wanted to talk about it today because I don't suffer from them often, but when I do, it is debilitating to where it does take me out of commission basically for like the next 4 to 5 hours basically, or I have to have a major mind switch, either with medication, drinking, whatever it is. Not obviously not overindulging, but just a different mindset to ease the tension, to relax a little bit. Because when you're in the midst of that panic attack, you feel like your whole body is tense. You feel like you're tight. You feel like you can't move or get out of a situation. And that's definitely something that I feel like, a good majority of people can acknowledge and connect with, because it is something that I feel like a lot of people who are even more anxious than I am deal with every single day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it makes a lot of people scared when they have a panic attack because they don't know what's going on. You mentioned a few of the symptoms like the fast heartbeat and you're sweating and you feel like your chest is tightening and everything around you. And that can be terrifying because that could be a heart attack, that could be a stroke, that could be like numerous things that those symptoms are also related to. And that's why it's so important, and I really want to put it out there for everybody to understand that a panic attack is not physically dangerous for you. It feels like it because you feel those symptoms and you feel like that's happening and that's going on, but it's not. It's all here that's triggering those symptoms. It's not actual symptoms. So that can be in itself, when you're trying to deal with the panic attack, that in itself can be terrifying, and prolong the panic attack probably, in my opinion, when you don't know quite sure what's going on until you've had a couple, right? this is your very first panic attack and you have those symptoms, you're thinking anything but panic attack. You're thinking, oh my gosh, what is happening to me? And I kind of want to talk about this a little bit too, and clearly you'll have more, in depth on, but I want to differentiate for people out there because, anxiety is different than a panic attack, okay? When you're anxious about something, when you're suffering from anxiety, that's long term. That can be like you start to freak out about something and then you're recalling shit that happened 30 years ago and you're thinking about it every day. The next day you're still thinking about it. The next day you're like, "But what if this happened? But what if?" Panic attacks are in the moment. It's something causes it, something spurs it, and it's an in the moment attack of a mental collapse. Where anxiety is kind of like spread out. It's longer term, right?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I like you said, I do feel like though that anxiety can lead up to
Oh,
a
without
panic
doubt.
attack. I mean, we have so many people who harp on the past, and definitely it leads into a certain situation to where they feel like a past event can tie into a current day situation. So
Right.
then it leads into a panic attack. But yeah, I do completely agree because yeah, long anxiety is more long form.
Right.
It is more, going back to I'm anxious about what happened in the past. I'm anxious about what's going to happen in the future. But yeah, panic attack is very in the moment. This is happening now, and you don't obviously live with panic attacks on a day-to-day basis. But
Exactly.
yeah, it is very interesting though because yeah, when you pose the debate anxiety versus panic attack, a lot of people do think they are hand in hand, and they are, but they're it's like a lead up. It's like a depression lead up basically. Like if something makes you sad, then that might lead into depression. It's like a stepping stone. It's not, exactly the same thing at the same time. But yeah, it is very interesting though because like you said that it's not anxiety and panic attacks aren't like physically dangerous, but with somebody who has had heart attacks, who has heart problems, I feel like it could eventually, like we just talked about, be a stepping stone to where it does lead into physical, right? Especially with somebody who has had a few heart attacks and heart problems.
Yeah, well, because if you know heart problems run in your family, right? And you've never had a panic attack and this is your first panic attack, but you're aware of heart history in your family, and all of a sudden your heartbeat is racing, you're sweating, you're short of breath, your chest is hurting, you're dizzy, all signs of a heart attack. So your immediate response, of course, would be, because you've never had a panic attack before, so you don't know this is what this is. Of course, your initial response would be, "Oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. I'm having a heart attack." Right? So, yeah, it can definitely lead to physical problems if you don't get it under control and you don't break down what it is and calm it down. I mean, anytime you're living in a state of an accelerated heartbeat and you're not breathing properly and I mean, you can cause issues physically if you don't come out of that. That's just a no-brainer. So and I like how you said too that they are connected, but anxiety builds into a panic attack over time if you let it, where it's not the other way around. Like, that panic attack doesn't lead into anxiety, it's the other leading into, right? Where something you've been dwelling on for a while and you've been anxious on for a while, and then there's just a trigger and you just panic about it, right? And so yeah, it's very interesting how they are linked and yet so totally separate, which I would imagine can make it pretty difficult, when that's the kind of mindset you're walking around in, right?
I look at it all as like pillars of mental health. I look as depression being a pillar. I look at anxiety being a pillar. I look at panic attacks, bipolar disorder, even though that's more neurological and physically, in your brain, I feel
Right,
like. But yeah, they're all pillars to the mountaintop that is mental health overall. And
right.
trying to maintain and sustain all of that can be very challenging because your body can go through different forms of these things. Like, I mean, for example, like when maybe you're getting really anxious about something or something happens to you very quickly that might not be a panic attack where your body goes into a fight or flight response to where you have to act right now. You have to make a quick decision. And then maybe inevitably that will enter into anxiety and then possibly a panic attack about what you had to act rationally or irrationally maybe on. So, I mean, it's trying to balance like the physical attributes of mental health and the actual mental attributes of mental health because they do both affect you in very dramatic and detrimental potentially ways because, people who make irrational choices while being in that state of mind, they, you know, might end up losing their life potentially,
Yeah.
and I don't think that you should ever make a decision like that that may be detrimental to your own self-being while you're in that state of mind. I think it's very important to, while you're in that state of mind, slow yourself down, slow your thinking down, slow your body down, sit still, try to just be in the moment and try to let the moment pass because when you have that adrenaline flowing through your body, like I said, you can make irrational decisions to where you may regret something that you do for the rest of your life or that might potentially end your life, like I just said. But I mean, it's important to normalize, the biological process and not take it as a personal weakness. Because I mean, even in Hollywood, everybody knows we're filmmakers, we love the entertainment industry. The films and television shows have depicted mental health in
Yeah.
two very different sides of the spectrum. Now we're in a very, loving, accepting side of mental health. But before, say back in the 90s or the 80s film and television, mental health was looked at as like a personal problem. Like what's wrong with you? Like why are you going through this? You can change this. You don't have to act like this. And now we know that you can't control it. You can have tools to maintain certain situations, but you can't necessarily control what may or may not spring things on. And hopefully, we are at a more of a point to where people all across the country accept it more than, what it was back in the day. And especially like being depicted, I'm glad it being depicted in more of a positive light rather than a, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you type of way.
Yeah, I think we're getting there. I think that there are still people who want to put that stigma on it and
Yeah.
make you feel bad for struggling mentally. Um, Unfortunately, those people are out there, but we are moving in the right direction and we are educating, which is key, right? Yeah. The whole thing with informing and educating people about what mental problems and mental illness and mental health are, as opposed to them going in blindly with just the stigma of that it's something wrong with you. I think that's critically important because there was for so long, like you said, where people did define it as something wrong with you or that you're weak and can't handle the situation. You walk into a room and you're uncomfortable and you end up having a panic attack and you leave, right? The adrenaline is fresh and you're trying to save yourself from doing something you don't want to do, and you leave, you're judged. Oh, you just can't handle it. Can't, doesn't like the big crowd. Oh, he doesn't, or he doesn't like what we're saying, or kind of a thing. And that for so long and for too long was the immediate judgment. It wasn't a, hey, are you okay? Is everything all right? What's going on? It was a, can't handle it. What's going on? And so I think we are definitely doing a good job of moving in the right direction. But I do think that we still have the issue where we want to stigmatize any form of mental health as there's something wrong with you, right? Like there's always that, and you can put the recent gun violence to that, or anytime anybody does something that oh well, there's something wrong with a person like that, people don't do it. Well, there is, but something got them there. It doesn't mean something's wrong with them as a person. It means that at some point, somewhere along the line, something affected the mental health capacity of where they're at in life and what they're thinking and how they're approaching it and receiving things. And So to just write it off as, well, there's something wrong with them, we've got to do a better job of the terminology and how we address what's going on. Somebody has a panic attack. There's not something wrong with them. They're going through something. Let's find out what it is. Let's have a conversation, right?
Yeah, most definitely. I completely agree. And I mean, I even found myself recently in a situation to where, like I said earlier on in the show, I had a panic attack. I don't know, something about being in a situation where there was some, I feel like toxic male masculinity, because there still is a lot of that out in the world. And to the point where, they were even discriminating against a certain group and religious affiliation of people, to where like I felt super uncomfortable because I don't have a problem with anybody. I don't want to talk badly or stereotype anybody in any type of way. And I felt like I was in a situation to where I couldn't get out of, especially when, how sometimes at these big gatherings where all the girls flock to one side and all the guys flock to another side. And when that happened, when all of these, like I said, I I wouldn't necessarily label them as toxic because I don't know all of them, individually more as people, but the conversation that they were having was very toxic and depleting and just hateful, in my opinion, to where I felt like I'm not in the right situation. I'm not in the right crowd. I'm not in the right room where I'm supposed to be, because I find myself to be a conversationalist, especially now after the podcast and my journey to be able to find my voice. But now, when I'm in that type of situation, it's very uncomfortable because like I have nothing to contribute to that conversation, and I'm not going to ruin the event just because there's a topic of conversation that I don't, particularly agree with. I'm not going to blow up and ruin the event. But because of being there, being in that situation, being in that environment, it did cause me to later on, when I got home, have a panic attack, and I was kind of rough for the rest of the night because I was like, I don't fit in. I don't fit in there. Yeah, I mean, being in a situation where you're basically stuck in between a rock and a hard place, that's where I find myself, entering in these different types of panic attacks.
And there's so much to unpack there because um and the word I'm going to use, and I think it's multifaceted and multi-layered here, is avoidance, right?
Yeah.
You get into a point where you feel like you have to avoid conflict instead of saying, hey guys, I'm not comfortable with this, can we talk about something else? Or and the fact that you felt like you had to avoid or invalidate how you were feeling because you were worried about disrupting, right? That's dangerous potentially for mental health, when we feel like we have to avoid how we're feeling or not acknowledge how we're feeling because we're afraid somebody's not going to be okay with it. That's dangerous, and you should never have to be put into that situation. Although I completely understand your reaction and why you had that reaction and had to linger to get to the panic attack after you left.
I know. Thinking back
That's
on it now, I wish I would have just, seen the situation and taken myself out of the
right,
situation.
right.
I came over, showed my face, I did my, appearance. I didn't necessarily need to stay. I just wanted to, you know. But yeah, I that thinking back on it now, that is what I would do differently in the sense of, making sure I don't lead up to that panic attack.
Well, and the other thing that I really want to talk about, because I think this is important too, and it goes to the key word again, avoidance. This is this type situation where I think all of society has to start doing a better job of. One, they should have noticed that you were uncomfortable. They should have reached out and said, "Hey, are you okay? You're not kind of joking around or laughing with us. Is that are we like we don't mean to offend you?" Kind of ask, communicate, have that conversation, notice how you're feeling, right? Because I'm sure there were signs of you were feeling a bit uncomfortable. I'm sure that's evident to anybody that was paying attention. The other side of that is we have to have a conversation about, because I feel these are warning signs. These are warning signs that we talk about all the time. What's triggering their toxicity or their hatred towards that specific group that they were talking about? That's not normal. So
Hmm.
why are you angry at that group? Let's talk about why you're triggered by this group. ignoring that is ignoring that warning sign that could potentially lead to further escalation against that group that they were angry with. And those are the type of things I think as society we need to do a better job of. And that's simply paying attention and then communicating. I'm having a problem. I don't feel comfortable. Can we talk about this? If you don't feel comfortable talking about it, I'm going to remove myself from the situation. And you shouldn't have to feel bad about that. You shouldn't have to feel like you did something wrong. That should just be an acknowledged moment and boom. And then on the other side of that, like I said, I don't think that we're at a point yet in society where we feel free to just approach people and say, hey, man, that's not funny. Why are you so angry with them? What's going on? Did something cause that anger? Are you, because we need to diffuse that before you take that anger somewhere else to a higher level or a more dangerous level. But we're not there yet. And that's why so many people slip through the cracks, right? And yeah, so it's amazing how this whole episode is kind of like anxiety and panic attacks, and it leads to, I feel like, exactly what you just said and how we're kind of like wrapping it up with avoidance. There's still that stigma of I'd rather avoid the situation, avoid the embarrassment, or avoid the causing a problem and just walk away with it and deal with it internally, personally, on my own. And that's dangerous. I think that can be potentially really dangerous. And we, especially, like I said, I don't really go through that situation. I would have probably gotten myself in trouble and said something, but but I like though, that we're having this discussion because I feel like there's so many people that were in your situation that did the same thing. I've got to just deal with this, move on, and then have it hit me when I get home. And, and that's scary because you'd like to think that we're a little further along than that, but we're not.
No, definitely not. I mean, especially when you're in that person's house, right?
Well, exactly
Yeah,
my point,
yeah,
right?
so it's a very interesting thing. But we also do want to talk about like coping strategies, practical tools that you can use when you are going through something like that. Of course, breathing exercises, box breathing, which is like and then slow exhales. You have grounding techniques, of course, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method,
Yep.
and then feeling an object in your hands. Reminders that this too shall pass, and I've survived this once before. And then, of course, lifestyle tips because, adrenaline can creep up in other ways rather than just in mental health, like reducing caffeine. Caffeine can definitely cause, built up anxiety that can lead to a panic attack. That definitely, I'm thankful that that's not a problem for me because I love my
Same,
caffeine.
bro. I need my caffeine.
Getting
Like,
enough sleep. Sleep is so detrimental and so underutilized and so underappreciated. Sleep is one of the most important things for your body
critically
to
important.
recover. You're like completely get back to 100%. So be sure to try to do what you can. I know it's definitely hard sometimes with some people. And then exercise and gentle exercise. If you just want to go out on a 30-minute walk instead of that 2-hour walk, just get outside, get some fresh air, and definitely take it all in. It helps you in the long run too, because you don't, it's activity. Your body's moving. It's better than just sitting on the couch and, letting all of those body fats and trans fats and things just sit there. You need to get that blood flowing. You need to make sure that you are continuing moving. And then, of course, I mean, you got some more long-term support, and with recovery, things like that. You got therapy options, CBT, exposure therapy. Of course, if it gets to this point and some people have to be medicated, medications, SSRIs, I don't, whatever. We're not doctor.
Benzodiazepines. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, yeah, yeah. Obviously, talk to your therapist or your doctor upon medical supervision and things like that. And then, of course, your support system. Be sure to talk to your friends and joining support groups, maybe if you want to. Talk to your parents, talk to your loved ones. It's very important. And then we, of course, want to encourage everyone listening out there to speak with a doctor or a therapist or a mental health professional about if your panic attacks or anxiety is very frequent because, to have that professional opinion will get you further along in life in the long run. Of
And
course, of
Willie, and
course.
I think that the thing is like with the therapy options and the medication and things like that, that terrifies people.
It
But
does.
opening up and talking to your friends and your family and your support group, Everybody can do that. Everybody, like we've been both. You had your recent panic attack. I've been going through some stuff, and we were both like, "Oh man, what a perfect day to do EOP." And it's because it's just sometimes it's as simple as just talking about it, just acknowledging that you're going through it, and have someone listen. Right? Sometimes that's all it's really needed to make you feel a little bit better. Obviously, it doesn't mean you're never going to have it happen again. It doesn't mean, you're cured all of a sudden from anything that might be ailing you. But support is key. And whether that's talking to a therapist or a doctor or your best friend or your spouse, or as long as you're talking to someone, you don't internalize it and keep it to yourself. That's where we start building things up into problems that become uncontrollable. And that's the other thing, right? We want to remind everybody that this is manageable. Panic attacks and anxiety are manageable, but it starts with not letting them define who you are because you have them, and by openly communicating to people that you are going through something. Because that's the only way we start to address helping, is to know that you're going through something. Very critical, very critical. Communication is key, I think.
No, for sure. And I mean, it's important to remember too, we're all human. We
Yes.
don't have a manual. We don't have a guidebook. We have references to everyone else's life who have come before us, or, who has been on a similar trajectory as we are as human beings, whether that be career or personal fields. So it's important to realize that you're going to make mistakes. You're human. You're going to fall down, but you better get back up, because it's one of those things to where it's a life lesson. And I know a lot of people don't like to fail. A lot of people don't like to go through something like that is maybe traumatic or depressing or things like that. But once you do, you gain different tools and different knowledge to where you could potentially help somebody else further down the line, to where you've been through a similar situation. And it's all about experience, because once you have that experience, you can speak on it. And that is very freaking important. But as always, guys, we want to thank everyone out there for listening to this conversation, because, like Dustin just said, but I mean, we needed it. We've been taking a
Yeah.
couple weeks
Yeah.
off. We've been sick, both of us had, like, he had, stomach flu. I had strep throat. We were going through it, man. Like,
It was
not just
rough, man.
mentally, but physically, right?
Yeah, dude, and it's just, oh, it's awful. It's awful. And we talk about it all the time. The physical does play into the mental, and vice versa. So if you found yourself having a rough mental week because you were having the stomach flu or strep, yeah, it's connected. I want to just touch on one more thing before we wrap it up that you just said, because I think it's important about, like, when you mentioned failure. And I want to define the difference for all the listeners out there. Life is going to be full of successes and failures. Failure is not losing. It's not a loss. The only loss in life, the only way you lose in life is if you quit, if you give up. There's nothing wrong with failing. We learn to move forward from failure. Failure is necessary. Losing is not. You lose when you give up. You learn from the failures. You grow from the failures. Just don't get up. I mean, give up. Like you said, just get up, learn from it, move on. That I think that's key, because I think a lot of people associate failure with losing. I should just give up. I keep failing. No, no. Get back up and figure out why you keep failing. It's the lesson that you're supposed to learn. And I think that's just key. And I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, most definitely. It's one of those things, man. And always, like I said, thank you, listeners, for having us have this conversation. Because,
Yes.
there are people who reach out to us and let us know their thought process and connect with it. Or, we might bring a different perspective. So we're thankful for all the comments. We're thankful for all the listeners. You're the reason we keep doing this. And of course, it's our bi weekly therapy session. So we love this freaking thing.
Yes.
But of course, if you would like to, you can share your experiences on panic attacks or anything mental health related. If you want to share them with us, it could be anonymous. It can be, we can give your at least first name. But you can email us at info@crazyantmedia.com. We love the fan interaction. We love having a conversation. And if anyone would like to come on the show and talk about your own mental health, we're open to that as well. And then, of course, remember, you can connect with us at Everything's OKP on social media. We're on
Yep.
X, Threads, and Instagram, so be sure to do that. And then, our next topic, I think, we're gonna figure it out when we're gonna talk about, I think, support. I think support is a big thing. I posted on social media a couple weeks ago about when you're chasing a dream, sometimes your family doesn't understand. Like they support you, but they don't know how to talk to you about it. So that can be, sometimes defeating and sometimes, disencouraging, I guess. So we're gonna talk about that. I feel like, especially for all you dream chasers out there. I think it's an important one, right?
Yeah, I think that for the dream chasers out there, sometimes when you're chasing your dream and it does feel like nobody is supporting you and nobody is seeing you and nobody is understanding or listening to you, it can lead to a very dark place of isolation because you feel alone. You feel like nobody gets it, nobody sees it, nobody understands it, and that can lead to isolation, which of course can lead to depression and all kinds of stuff. So I think that support group, it's okay for somebody to say, I don't understand. I don't know why you're chasing this or why you won't just walk away from this, but I see you and I acknowledge what you're doing. Just say that it's okay, that you recognize that they're doing something and not just completely ignore it, right? Support is so critical. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And as always, everyone, have a great week. We'll see you next time. And always remember that everything's okay.